California lawmakers sell out to big oil in order to reach a last-minute deal on climate and energy and not have even yet more oil refineries closed down. Does that make sense? Oh, and then there's Gavin Newsom's going to be running for president, so he doesn't want to have even higher gas prices. So this is what we're doing. What's it look like? Here we go. Last night, negotiations between podcaster Gavin Newsom, Democratic leaders in the state legislature produced a flurry of agreements on Wednesday on pivotal climate and energy programs. Now, I know this isn't the most, it's not fantastically engaging, right? It's not, but this is what is driving all of the expenses of Californians just absolutely going to the moon. And we're going to go through some of what California is number one in. And it's not good. Trust me, it is not good. After months of hard work with the legislature, we've agreed to historic reforms that will save money on your electric bills. Some of the highest energy costs in the nation. Okay, those ones, yeah. Stabilized gas supply. Okay, yeah, because you've already constricted it and you've basically pushed out big oil from the state of California. You're going to stabilize that gas supply. All right. And slash toxic oil pollution. You mean the air pollution that you bring in when you've constricted the amount of oil that you can produce domestically and you bring it in on big oil shipping containers from the Mideast? You mean that toxic air pollution that they throw out? Oh, but that doesn't count against your domestic, does it? Because it's international coming. All right, I got it. Yep, all right. All while fast-tracking California's transition to a clean, green job creating economy. How is that working out? How's that working out? Newsom said in a statement. On their own, each of the deals to extend the state's cap and trade climate program, ease regulations on oil and gas production, reform utility spending, and advance regional energy sharing are controversial and complex endeavors. Taken together, they represent lawmakers with a series of monumental choices over California's energy transition. With just a few days left in the legislative year, they had to cut a deal. It's last minute. You got a refinery that's gonna adios, close down. You've got one that's closing down you've got Phillips 66, which is closing down this fall. And then you've got Valero with the other refinery closing down April of 2026. So they're trying to come up with something. Hey, pretty please, don't leave us. While many environmentalists praise the agreements for advancing the state's climate goals with an eye on affordability, that's what this is all about. This is about gas prices not absolutely spiking to the moon, which the USC professor has said they're going to go to $8.43. Then another guy from Bakersfield, a Republican, said, nope, going to $12, somewhere around $10 and $12. Environmental justice and consumer advocates slammed many of the provisions as a sellout to the oil and gas industry. Numerous participants in the negotiations agreed they had rarely seen a collection of high-stakes climate policies come together in such a whirlwind of last-minute negotiations. Why would that be? Why all of a sudden are we just making things happen? Decades and decades and decades of layers of absolutely mind-blowingly terrible legislation. I mean, literally pull out the gun and shoot yourself in the foot over and over and over again. And that's what California has done to big oil. And now they're coming around saying, oh, you know what? You're looking pretty good. I think we should do this again. I think we should. I mean, let's give this another run. Let's just give this another little run and we'll see where it goes. And who knows? Maybe something will work out. I don't know. Future's unknown. Gavin Newsom knows his back is against the wall. He's got so many things that buyers have objections to, as far as constituents in the United States objecting to him being president of the United States, that he's got to do something in his time left in office here. He's out in 2026, right? This was a wretched process, said Katie Venezuela, a consultant for environmental justice groups. This was the most closed-door, hardest to influence process from a community perspective that I've ever seen. Okay. And that's what tells me, well, they're just slamming this bad boy through. Let's make it happen because, gosh darn it, I need to be president of the United States. That's gruesome, Newsom. Who was it that told him to shut up? I think it was maybe he was talking about Charlie Kirk. Oh, it was Megyn Kelly. She's like, don't play my video. Megyn Kelly was saying something about Trump. It was like, terrible. State Senate and Assembly will not be able to vote on the bills until Saturday morning due to a state law requiring all bills be printed. Got to have the bills printed for 72 hours before a final vote. Is that like physically printed? I think it is. And some of those bills are just huge, right? So that way you don't read through them and actually pay attention, and then they just go into law, and then we go, how'd that happen? Well, they printed it out. It was 1,400 pages, and I didn't read it. Oh, okay. Lawmakers will need to extend the session currently set to recess on Friday at midnight. They can't get their act together and make all this happen, which they won't be able to. So they'll do a little bit of an extension and then they'll get there, whatever this is. After months of talks, lawmakers reached an agreement on an extension of cap and trade, landmark program designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in California. That drives me crazy. You've got these big refineries and they got to pay for their carbon emissions and they're supposed to reduce it every year. And if they don't, then they can pay into the fund. It's absurd because this really has virtually no impact on the environment. All of this nonsense is just that. It's shenanigans. It's shenanigans of the highest order. It's like, we're such good green people. Yeah, but in doing so, your virtue signaling is costing Californians enormous amounts of money, and you've got expenses going through the roof. You are pushing Californians into the greatest level of poverty in the United States. And we're going to read about that in a second. So you've got the cap and trade. You've got this extension of cap and trade investment. It's extended in a manner that will help ensure we actually meet our 2045 greenhouse gas reduction goals. Environmental justice advocates said capping statewide emissions does little for residents living near refineries. Hey, if you moved in and the refinery's been there since 68, and it's been there since 68, those refineries are going to have some pollution. Kind of just need to work through that. Whatever you get, right? How about the new incentives for the oil industry? Bill aims to loosen some of California's environmental regulation to hedge against rising gasoline prices and respond to the planned closure of 2 oil refineries in the state. California is the only state in the nation requires motorists to shift to a lower emissions fuel in the summer. They've got their own special blend of herbs and seasons, don't they? That's supposed to reduce smog and improve air quality for decades. But when the other states around you aren't doing the same thing, and maybe other countries that, I don't know, populate the same globe, does it really matter? I don't think so. Plus, I just don't really care. Hey, don't be a terrible steward of the earth, but also don't go ham like California has, because it just makes your economy. You got the 4th largest economy in the world, and you're doing a stellar job of driving it into the ground. The bill, if passed, would require the governor to suspend the higher fuel standard whenever prices spike for more than 30 days. This is you're just jerry-rigging an already bad situation. All right, if we move it here, it's going to have this impact. And you're like, no. So you got a deregulation bonanza. It's all about retreating on the things that we've worked in this state. Really? The bill would remove regulatory and legal obstacles for thousands of new oil wells if they've got 2 that have either been orphaned or abandoned, whatever they call it, in oil land. Then you can bring a new one in. You can drill for a new one, which, okay, but that's not really, that does something for the refineries, but this doesn't, the whole picture is so complex that doesn't really do much for the California refinery scene. Oil companies and environmentalists have clashed for more than a decade over challenges that have effectively stalled the permitting process for new oil wells in Kern County. Kern County being the county with the most oil in it in California, and it's got some reserves. I mean, there are some big reserves there. Drill, baby, drill if you want to make it go, but California's not doing that. Politics of this, that everybody's really worried. We're seeing affordability issues all over the place in the energy sector. So that's the hook for the industry to say, if you let us drill for more, then we'll feed more crude oil to the refineries. Let's see. If you allow us to drill, we'll be able to get more oil to the refineries. You'll have greater supply, and then prices won't go to the moon. Does that make sense? It's basic stuff. So this is back and forth, right? You got utility reform and wildfires fund. There's always going to be a bunch of extra stuff thrown in there. Well, while we're at it, let's just try and get this done. And we'll see what's going on. So and then also in the meantime, there's talk about California taking $200 million of state funds and just throwing it towards the refinery, Valero, to let them do some repairs on their own. Hey, how about we subsidize you? Yeah, but you ran us out of the state. Well, we just need another couple of years. How about $200 million? Can you guys stay? Can you keep open for $200? Well, I'll see what we can do. I mean, maybe we'll see what we can do. That's kind of where we sit, because Newsom's back is against the wall because of this kind of ridiculousness. California leads U.S. in poverty rate. This came out literally like 3 hours ago, maybe 4 hours ago. Let me read you what I've got. This came out 4 hours ago. Unemployment in California projected to get worse as prices rise. They've got the worst unemployment in the nation. So you've got California leading the way on lack of affordability. Most people in poverty. They are tied with Louisiana, I believe, at 17.7%. You've got the highest income tax. You've got the highest gas prices, oftentimes tying with Hawaii, Washington State, right in there at third. You've got just highest housing costs, highest income taxes, highest state tax. I mean, the list just keeps going on and on and on. But the poverty rate is because all of these things have increased the expenses of your average family, of your average constituent in California, and wages have not risen accordingly. So you've got this issue where you're just being eaten up. And that is, in large part, I think, why California has some of the highest homelessness, because housing costs alone are just out of the world. I mean, they're so expensive, especially in markets like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and the Silicon Valley. And that is where you have the most concentration of homelessness, because people can't afford anything. Somebody was telling me, not somebody, I know who you are, and you know who you are. We were having a talk. They're in North Dakota, and their gasoline started with a 2. A 2. What in the world? $2 and something. I think it was $2.76 a gallon. And then rent, get a 2-bedroom in North Dakota for $700. I mean, then you got to live in North Dakota. I get it. And the winters might be, cold. Yeah, I get it. It's kind of like saying, well, Seattle's rainy. Until you've been through 9-10 months of Seattle weather, it's a tough go. It's a tough go. Let's look at the poverty rate here, though. California continues to have the highest poverty rate in the U.S., tying with Louisiana at 17.7. See, I remember some things. Despite a decrease from 18.9 and 23, nearly 7 million Californians struggle to afford basic necessities like food, housing, and medical care. So one of the things with the whole gas issue is that when you have gasoline spike to the moon, like $8.43, a la the USC professor, or $12 a gallon, a la the Bakersfield Republican, when you've got gas that's gone through the roof, then everything else in California becomes more expensive. And the U.S. is, in large part, in many segments, dependent upon California, because there's so much trade that goes back and forth, because California is the fourth largest economy in the world. Gavin Newsom has done a phenomenal job at just chipping away at the success of his state with policy. This is all policy. So the gas and oil is literally all policy. The supplemental poverty measure highlights the SPM highlights these challenges, considering factors like high living costs and out-of-pocket medical expenses. Sacramento Bee reports that renters, especially for communities of color, are disproportionately affected, with 27% of California renters living in poverty compared to 11.1% of homeowners. You've got a system of the haves and the have-nots. If you've got a home in Seattle, in Bellevue, wherever it is that I am, you're set. You've probably got a bunch of equity, and that is gonna keep going up because you've got a very constricted supply of housing here, and you got tech bros coming in all day long. That's what smooths things out. California's economy is more roller coaster. You've got some real highs and then you've got some real lows, and the economy kind of goes up and down based on that. So right now, poverty is one of the biggest things that California has, because so many of the working class are having their earnings eaten away. High rent, high gas, high energy prices, you name it. High income taxes, state income taxes, just the whole shebang. Because you got to feed all of those programs based on terrible progressive policy at the state level. You got to feed those with something, and it's taxes. I'm seeing more and more things indicating, wow, we've got to have progressive revenue. And that just means taxing the wealthy and taxing business. And when you do that, those folks are mobile. They can get up and leave and say, hey, go F yourself, like Jeff Bezos did from his house here. He said, Washington State, no longer need you. I'm retired. I got my haughty number 2 wife. Is that number 2? Is Lauren Sanchez is number 2? I think it is. Got haughty wife with, some really examples of plastic surgery. He's got that going on. He said, I'm leaving Washington, selling my $63 million home, and I'm going to Florida. He already had a place in Florida, but with the way things are going here in Washington State, which is just basically California light, Seattle is San Francisco 2.0. Things aren't going in the right direction. You've got a bunch of nut jobs that are going to get into office, are going to do some real socialist shenanigans. I mean, if Katie Wilson wins in Seattle, all bets are off. Anything could happen. It'll be wild. And that's more than likely who's going to win. And any of the other moderate positions in Seattle, because Trump won, and there's been this big pushback conservative-wise, they're all going to lose their spots. All the moderates are going to lose their spots, and you're going to get just a bunch of whack nut jobs doing shenanigans in Washington State, and people are going to leave. Businesses are going to leave. We're already seeing that happen. So what you've got going on here with today is trying to stop the bleeding, for a terrible, terrible, analogy, considering the whole Charlie Kirk thing. Man, I really wanted to live stream that, but not the event itself, but just, hey, remembering Charlie Kirk, but I just can't bring myself to do it. It's just so bad. I'm just kind of letting that go. So that's just a terrible, terrible deal. But the cost just absolutely getting out of control in California has been there for years and years and years. But you're finally at a point where people are voting with their feet, meaning they are moving away, and they're going to Texas, they're going to Florida, they're going to Idaho, they're coming to Washington State, because believe it or not, as bad as things are in Washington State, they're not nearly as bad as they are in California. So you've got that. Here's another one. Unemployment in California projected to get worse as prices rise. California's unemployment rate, the highest state figure in the nation in July, projected to climb to 6.1%, stay around 6% next year. Factors in the weak labor market of 2025, which is weak due to artificial intelligence. Is that really what you've got going on? Got a bunch of AI taking over jobs. Most job growth, it said, is in areas that depend on public funding, notably state and local government and healthcare, which haven't been able to replace workers with AI. Because you really can't. You got to have people doing those tasks, right? It's like your local mechanic. Not going to get replaced with AI because somebody's physically got to get in there and do it. Till they get robots that can actually, get in there and do all that good stuff. Ain't happening. I mean, that's going to happen at some point in time. Our technology just isn't there for the whole shebang, right? Forecast, though, has some notes of hope. All right, let's hear what the notes of hope are. Last year, base forecast for the California economy was for slower growth in the U.S. in 2025. That appears to have been the case, although the U.S. numbers are due for a major revision. Despite lagging employment growth, overall economic growth will come close to the nation's and then move slightly faster in 2027. The jobless rate is projected to drop in the mid to lower 5% range in 2027. So you still have elevated unemployment and you still got all of those costs, and those are continuing to go up because California's inflation is some of the greatest out there as well. And so earnings are continually being eroded. And with housing costs just going to the moon, don't expect this to get any better. So whatever Gavin Newsom can do and whatever the state legislature can do to kind of head off some of the headwinds of, this isn't good during an election run. And that's literally what we're seeing right now. Because if you add in on the fire, if you, putting fire or gasoline on fire, if you squirt a little gas in there, we'll see what happens. Elevated gasoline prices would do that. And they would be yet another nail in the coffin of buyer objections to why Gruesome Newsom, podcaster Newsom, shouldn't be president of the United States. He's already got so many on the books. There's so many examples on the books. But you know what? We're in a system now where people just don't really care. They want what they want. They want their politics. And they'll be damned if they're going to vote the other way. That's probably better for them. But because they have this twisted sense of reality, which is California, you got the highest unemployment, you got the highest inflation, you got the highest housing costs, highest fuel costs, highest energy costs. How many different things do you need to bring up that are number one, that are terrible? And yet, this past week, I saw a woman walking through my neighborhood in Bellevue, Washington, just over here, with a shirt, Newsom 2028. And you're left with, are you just flat mentally ill? What is wrong with you? How mentally ill are you? I just want to stop the car and rattle off like 10 of those things. Hey, if you're okay with this, and this, I recommend you voting for Gavin Newsom, because if that's something you need in your life, if you need all those factors in your life, I hope you get what you desire. That's what I wanted to say to that lady, but I don't want to be that dick, right? I already drive a big white truck. I got a flag flying. Sometimes I go in and out of my house with some guns. I mean, who knows? I work on mechanics. I do, things that require manly skill and labor. And in Bellevue, Washington, those things are, I am not a popular individual and I don't really care. That's just what we're doing. All right. So California, selling out to big oil had to be done. And this is just a tiny little stopgap to get to the position where you don't have maybe another couple of refineries closing, maybe you squeak out just enough time where podcaster Newsom gets his election campaign going and the constituents will go, oh, let's vote for him. That's what's going to happen. All right. That's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next episode. Bye for now.